Hello, hello, welcome to Mindset2results. Our guest today is Daryl Dittmer, and we will speak about success. Hi, Daryl.
Hello, Elena. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
You're most welcome. Tell us a little bit about your story. How was your life and how you cracked the code of success, what success means to you, and how you help other people to find theirs.
Sure, I appreciate that. It's interesting. I'll talk a little bit about my success in terms of my definition of it, which has changed immensely over time. But I grew up in the Midwest of the U.S., which is kind of known for Protestant work ethic, hard work, grinding, those types of things. And that's how I grew up. When I was young, my dad put me in front of a local farmer after church, and he said, "Can you put him to work?" He said that to the farmer, and the farmer said, "Yeah, I can put him to work." And I think I was 14 at the time, and that was my introduction to hard work, and it was a great thing. It wasn't something that I necessarily liked, in the beginning, but I knew that I needed to be a hard worker, and that's what I was taught, and that's what both my parents taught my brother and my sister and I. So when we were doing 12, 14-hour days on the farm and coming home exhausted and dirty and just, a difficult day of hard work, it was gratifying, and I took those lessons as I got older and utilized those lessons in my life because a lot of people say work smart as opposed to work hard, and I believe in that. I definitely believe in that. But sometimes the smartest thing I can do is put in the effort and put in the work. And so I think it's a balance of those two things. So I got a little bit off my track when I was in my teenage years. I got involved in drugs and drinking, and that escalated for me to the extent to where I was put into a drug and alcohol treatment program at the age of 19. And little did I know at that time, it was a very frightening thing for me. I was way off track. I wasn't, other than working hard because I always had to have jobs and bring in money for myself to be able to do things. There weren't any handouts in the family, which I think was a great thing. So I kept working hard, but I was losing myself, and I was losing my grip on my life, my grip on me, and I wasn't understanding at that time of life is a journey to be enjoyed and to be to work toward success and work toward the things that we want and work toward, as the name of your podcast, Elena, mindset, and mindset to results, right? That's what achieves it. But how do we get to the mindset is the question. And me getting to the mindset of a success-oriented mindset was not an easy thing for me to do. I had to relearn a lot of the things that I was told when I was young. And so I got out of drug treatment. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be successful. And for me at that time, success had more to do with making money than anything else. I wasn't aware at that time that the components of success, as they are for me now, have to do with contentment and fulfillment and happiness and peace of mind and meaning or purpose, in addition to the financial aspects. So it's been a journey of changing myself, and I have the propensity to be a real hard driving person, but for me, success is also balancing that with some quiet and some peace in my life and some slowing down so that I can enjoy the success. And I think that's really crucial in terms of, there's a lot of people that make money, and I've been fortunate to, to be in that category. But I also am fortunate that I learned that contentment and fulfillment are also aspects of success that I need to cultivate so that I can enjoy the money, and I can enjoy doing the things that money can allow me to do. So that's just kind of a broad brush on my idea of success and how I grew up, and being directed in a way that helped me to achieve those things in my life. And then I chose to write my books and help other people potentially achieve those things through my stories.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So, what do you think are the steps for people to find their success, to find their happiness? Many people don't have big goals. Many people, as you said, are conditioned by parents, by education system, and they just live in this everyday routine, and they think that they have to work, pay bills, grow children, and something that they really love to do, that is their hobby, that they think it is their hobby, they will do it when they have time, when they retire or when the children go to college or whatever. So, how would you say, what are the steps for people to understand that they don't need to wait for years till they retire, or we even don't know how many years we have, right? We only know
Right.
what is today. We never know what how much is enough for us in future. So how would you say, like, what is the steps to understand that it is now, it is today, to find out what success means to you, and what are the steps to do that?
For me, I think the first step was understanding that life can be different. Life doesn't have to be churning the same thing over and over and over my entire life. And I watched my dad do that. He spent 40 some years working at General Motors in the Midwest. He was a mechanic, and that's what he did. And in that generation, I think that was a very accepted practice. That was what a lot of people's dads did, or that was they went to work, they did their job for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day, whatever it was. They got their paycheck, they came home, they raised their family, and that was that. And I think, my generation is a little bit different in that regard, but I think we need to understand that there's something bigger. And what needed to happen for me was I needed to get sick and tired of being sick and tired that with my life the way that it was. And I think that's a crucial component. You have to say to yourself, and I had to say to myself, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to change something. And I have to be able to step out of my comfort zone, and try something different. And a lot of times it's try something different over the course of time. And when I was younger, I was fortunate that after I went through drug treatment, I was able to go to college. Nobody in my family had ever graduated from college, and I was the first one. And that was a pretty cool thing, but that's not what brought me any form of success. That was a step to doing things differently. That was, I could have just as easily stayed in my hometown and got a local job at a hardware store, or with the city, or carpentry or something like that. But I chose to do something different. And then I chose to get into a sales position, which I grew up in a very blue collar family. So So it wasn't, nobody was in sales. Nobody was in a white collar, office job, that kind of thing. And so I had to choose to do that differently. And I chose to get in sales. And then I was asked to go move from the Midwest to Boston to, to I guess, chase another sales position. And I did that, and then I bought a home that I couldn't afford, and so I did that. So for me, it's a series of stepping outside of my comfort zone and stepping outside of things that are the normal, quote unquote, life for me. And each time I did that, it moved me into something different. It showed me, it opened up a new doorway, and a new path, and that wouldn't have been opened if I wasn't willing to take a little bit of risk. So there's some faith involved, there's some courage involved, there's a willingness to do things differently involved, and I think those are really the important things to get us out of that comfort zone and then allow us to to get a little bit maybe of success. And then once you taste it, once you taste something different, it's hard to stop. It's hard to stop that momentum, and that's, for a long time now, that's kind of been my story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so based on what you said, I just think that the first step is the vision, to open your mind to see different opportunities. Yes, different from what you were told by your parents, by education, whatever, that environment where you were. You opened your eyes and opened possibilities to see yourself in a different place. Yes, as you said, to go in sales and do something different. So in order to do that, someone has to believe in himself that he can do that. Yes, we have to believe this is possible, this is what we can do, and it all starts from, if I really want that. If we ask ourselves question, what I really want, how I really want to live, and then we see what is the can be the next step, what I can do in that direction. Of course, we don't know all the steps, yeah, but initially we have to identify what direction we want to go. Yes, like identify what success means for us, what will make us fulfilled, what direction we will go, what field of what we want to do, and do first step, even if it is small step.
Right, right, absolutely. I think that's crucial. I think there's no replacement for stepping out of my comfort zone. There's no replacement for, dipping my toe in the water of something different. And I agree with you 100%, Elena. I think that's absolutely crucial, because if we don't do that, nothing's going to change.
Yes, nothing is going to change if we don't change. Yes, all changes starts from within us. When we change, and in order to change, we have to start seeing ourselves as different person. So it is a very big difference when we see ourselves as like our identity, which was created by our parents, by our teachers, with people who were surrounding us when we were young, when we were infants, and another identity where we take action and we decide that I want to become this person, not who I was told I am, and not live life what I was told other people wanted me to become or to live like, because this is their vision. But what is my vision? What I really want, who I am, what are my strengths, what I really love to do. And when we answer to these questions, we can start creating new self-image, new identity, which will come from our desire, not from what we were told, but from really who we are and from our goals. When we set big goal, there should be match identity right? Energetic match of that frequency where our goal is big, and our identity should matching, should be aligned. We cannot achieve anything bigger in life if we don't change our identity, which will match to that goal. And this is the process of success. First, you believe in yourself, decide what to do, and then go for it. Make first step.
Right. And then don't quit, right? Because it's very it's a difficult road. But I look at it like this. If I want to be a person who is, in the 1 to 5% of achievers, call it, out there, and successful people out there, then I have to be willing to do what 95% to 99% of people out there aren't doing. And sometimes that brings difficulty, and that brings hardships, and that brings hurdles that I would not have had I not decided on this path. So that desire to do something different and that desire to be something different um, has to be sustained when we go through the tough stuff, because we're going to go through the tough stuff. And it's funny because when I was first starting on the journey, I would think, oh man, what's going to happen next? Like, oh, this is tough. And now I think from the perspective of, wow, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. And that's a really cool place to be. And we earn that place. We earn that place by going through the difficulties and creating that intestinal fortitude and that strength within ourselves, so that at some point in the journey, the difficult things are just little speed bumps instead of these big giant obstacles that we used to look at them as. And that's how I look at things now. It's just another thing. It's another stepping stone. It's another thing to do. It's another thing to get over. It's another thing to achieve. I've done a lot of things in my life, in terms of business, and I didn't know how to do any of them before I started doing them. And I think that's the key. We jump in and we figure it out as it goes. And because we're not going to know how to do it. We can't know how to do it before we do it. And we can't wait to know how to do it before we jump in, because then we'll never get anywhere.
Yeah, so true. We never can connect the dots when we look forward. We never know exactly how it will be. We have to um, trust the process, trust that universe will connect the dots for us when we do right things, when we have faith, because it is not good to live only in our head. Yes, not good to live just knowing everything how you are going to do. If you just think that you have to know how you will do everything, you will not grow. You will just stay the same place, because if you really want to grow and you really want to achieve something much bigger than your current situation, you have to be brave, you have to be bold, and you have to be willing to step into unknown. You step into unknown. This is the first step. You make decision to step into unknown and figure it out on the way. And how Richard Branson also said, if you somebody offers you an opportunity, you say yes and then think how to do that. And also, I like a quote of Steve Jobs. He said that you can never connect the dots when you look forward. You only can connect dots looking backward. So you
Mm.
have to trust that somehow universe or somehow these dots will be connected in the future. And this is how the growth process happening. When we have something difficult, this is difficult. It is not because it is difficult. It is difficult because we are at that level, right? Something that is difficult for us, for somebody else who is already many levels ahead, it is just nothing, right? So it is not about the thing itself. It is about our growth, where we are. And when we face some challenges, some difficulties, we have to embrace them because this is the process. If you said that you want that goal, if you said you want that, so this is the way. This is how you have solved these difficulties, these challenges, and through solving, through going through them, you become wiser, you become stronger, you become more experienced, and this is how you break through. And then you look back and say, "Oh, that was easy." That you don't. When you look back, you never think that those things were difficult. You think them difficult when you are in the process, but when you go through them, then you just like in the game, you just in the next level, you're in the next level, right? So when every time you play game and you come to the next level, when you go a few levels before, you say, "Oh, it is so easy." But when you were in that moment, you didn't think it was easy. This is how the exact process of growth happens, and this is who you have to become, how you have to grow in order to achieve that goal.
Right, right, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting because when I set goals when I was younger, I set goals when I was in my 20s, and as things started to progress for me, and as I gained more faith, um, I just kept going and started to really have faith in doing the stuff. And so I stopped setting goals because I thought, goals can be very limiting. Why would I limit myself to a goal? And so I started looking at life more from the perspective of intention, because I feel like if I intend to be at a place, if I intend to be this person, if I intend peace and contentment, if I intend, to be financially independent, the universe will show me how to get there. I don't have to say, I want to be this person with this job and this level of income. I can set the intention of being financially independent truly. And this is what I believe, and this is what's worked for me, and then I'm catapulted into that, via the steps, like you were just talking about, Elena. It really is about the steps. And I get over a hurdle and I look back and I'm like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Sometimes it takes a couple of years to look at it like, oh, that wasn't that bad. But I think that's crucial. And the evidence, that this way of thinking has worked for me is that I have a life beyond what I ever would have imagined or dreamed. And it's not in this little box. Like you said, we're handed these belief systems, and we have to expand that, and we can expand it to where we can just take the top right off and allow the universe to give us what it's willing to give us, which I think is beautiful. And I think, the universe wants us to be all of these things that have to do with a successful life, and so much more than just, the money part of it. I truly believe the universe wants us to be content and at peace, and, not to have restraints and those sorts of things. And so when I after a while, when I took the goals out of my life and I lived my life more from an intentional perspective, it really opened up, and that was an amazing transformation.
Yes, everyone can be successful, and if someone could do this, it means that you can also do this or anything else what success means for you. So it is not about that somebody is better than you or somebody is more lucky or maybe more talented. No, everyone can be successful. And if you identify what success means to you, and when you can see that big vision for yourself, when you can set that big goal where you want to be, it means that it is already there. Everything already is created. Nothing can be created or destroyed. Everything already created. You have like multiple different scenarios of your future. And depending on what you think today, what you feel today, what you decide to do, what your actions are, you choose that or another future patterns. Yeah, like I mean, scenarios. So if you want something really badly, like you have that burning desire, go for that because it is already there. You have just to grow, you have just to transform yourself and go through all these different situations, different challenges to grow and match, become energetic match to that goal, to become that person who will start automatically, naturally attract to yourself everything what will exist at that level of your frequency where you will come. And this is how you will attract everything what is needed for achieving your goal.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how, and I've watched this in my life, and exactly like you said, Elena, we connect the dots looking backward, not looking forward. And I look at my life and I think about, the lessons that have been presented to me and the lessons that I've been fortunate to learn. And sometimes I'll get the same, back in the day, I used to get the same lesson 10 times because I wasn't willing to learn and I wasn't willing to change. And then when I finally changed, I didn't get that lesson anymore. I didn't get the same sort of things. I got a different lesson. And I like to look at it like leveling up. Like we continually level up and we continually upgrade ourselves and our lives, and that's what I was very fortunate to have happen to me. And as I look back, I think, who's in charge of that? I'm not smart enough to do that. I'm not smart enough to figure all that stuff out. Like, what does Daryl need to change himself, like you were saying, so that I can continue to level up? And something, we'll call it the universe, we'll call it source, whatever you want to call it. People call it God. It's okay. I don't, whatever you call it, and that's fine. But um, something's in charge of that, and it's not me because I do not have, I don't have that kind of intelligence to move those pieces. And I'm so grateful for that. And that's another part of success for me is the gratitude part. I'm truly grateful when I wake up in the morning and I wake up in the morning with a smile on my face and I'm ready to go. And that's a great place to be. And I'm grateful that that's the case because that's a gift. That is absolutely a gift. And I look at it like I just did the work. I showed up and I did the work, and the rest of it's a gift.
Yes, thank you so much, Daryl. And before we wrap up our episode, would you please share just a couple of words about your books?
Sure. My first book is called When I Stop Fighting. And one of my mentors he said to me one day, because I grew up learning to fight, like you mentioned, the things we're handed as we're kids. I grew up learning to fight and to struggle and to wrestle and, just to tackle things and we can do that to ourselves mentally and emotionally and in the world and that sort of stuff. And he said to me, he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And so, a lot of people take that like, oh, you don't fight for what you want. No, I fight. I go out and do my thing, but I don't fight with myself. And that's the key. We have to learn to stop fighting with ourselves and stop fighting with other people and stop fighting the universe. The universe wants these things for us, and we don't, we sometimes fight our way out of them. And so that's my first book. It's my story really. It's about addiction and dysfunction and heading down the wrong path and how things turned around for me and the work that I did to change and it's a lot of stories that are funny and tragic and crazy and a whole bunch of things. So that's the first book. The second book is called When You Stop Fighting, and that's really about our wish list. What do we want from this lifetime? If we want peace and contentment and great relationships and meaning or purpose and those sorts of things. What's stopping us from getting there? And that's what my book talks about. What might be stopping us? What do we have to do to change? What do we have to do to move forward so that we can get to that wish list that I think we all want. So those are the books, and thank you so much for asking about them, Elena. I'm happy that I was able to write them, and I'm grateful that I was able to write them, and they're helping a lot of people out there.
Absolutely. I'm sure that so many people can learn from you and your experience, and the links for the books will be in description under this video. Thank you so much, Daryl. I really appreciate for your time and your being amazing guest on our podcast. And I wish you the best and looking forward to see you again.
Thank you, Elena. Yes, our paths will cross again, I'm sure, and thank you so much, and best to you.
Yeah, you're most welcome. See you soon.